I think it goes without saying that one of the most important aspects of the Pokemon series are the attacks. And while I could talk about some of my favorites, I thought it would be a little more interesting to take a look at the moves that I think are just downright terrible. Whether I'm playing competitively or just for fun, I just have a hard time seeing these moves serve much purpose, if any at all. Now keep in mind that this list is as opinion-based as it is fact-based, so your list may be a little bit different than mine. But now, with that out of the way, I present to you the top 10 worst Pokemon moves. Enjoy, everybody! Out of the 617 moves in the series, there have been only 2 that are affected by the friendship mechanic, and the one I'll be talking about today is Frustration. This move does damage based on how much the user dislikes its trainer, and its base power can reach a maximum of 102. If that sounds familiar, it's because it's an inverse equivalent to Return, though it's a lot more frustrating to get Frustration to work to its full potential, especially since Pokemon is all about forming bonds and the power of friendship. With simple things like walking raising a Pokemon's friendship level, you would really have to go out of your way to make your Pokemon hate you to the core, and that just doesn't seem right. It also doesn't seem right that the sole Pokemon that learns Frustration via level up is Bunnery, who, by the way, only evolves with a high enough friendship level, so if you want my advice, it'd be a lot more beneficial to just use Return and spread the love. Seasoned Pokemon veterans will know that Generation 1 is notorious for being broken beyond belief. There were a lot of moves that didn't work the way they should have, but one move was so broken it didn't work, period. That move is Focus Energy. It was originally supposed to multiply your critical hit ratio by 4. However, due to a glitch, Focus Energy actually divided your critical hit ratio by 4, effectively ensuring you're not gonna get lucky. So you can imagine just how dumbfounded I was when I played Pokemon Stadium a while back, and the opponents were just constantly landing critical hits on me after using Focus Energy. Had I known ahead of time that they actually fixed the move when Stadium came out, I may have retained some of my sanity. Honestly, my whole world was flipped upside down. Nowadays, Focus Energy is a little more viable. It multiplies your critical hit ratio by 2, and while it can't be stacked, it can be baton passed. But considering how low that boost is, it's really not worth using. And when you get right down to it, you shouldn't rely on luck to win battles. Unless, of course, you're playing the aforementioned Stadium, but that's another tale for another time. Psywave is a move that's irked me since the very beginning. For starters, it has a name that would make one think it's a force to be reckoned with, though that really isn't the case. It's actually quite lousy. It does typeless damage and isn't affected by same type attack bonus, but it still doesn't affect dark types. It's very similar to how Nightshade and Seismic Toss work, but where Psywave differs is how it deals out damage. Psywave takes the user's level and multiplies it with a random value between 0.5 and 1.5. So if you had a level 100 Pokemon use this move, it would do anywhere between 50 to 150 damage. And we're not talking about base power here, we're talking about how much HP it would take away. And as I mentioned earlier, it does random damage every time, making it very unreliable. It was even more unreliable back when it had 80% accuracy. Thankfully, every Pokemon that learns this move also has access to Psychic, and you don't need to have the IQ of an Alakazam to know which move is the better one. Dark-type moves are known for being sneaky and underhanded, and they usually have some interesting additional effects. Quash is one of those moves, but it's extremely situational. Even more so than Memento, which was originally going to be on the countdown. A move that's completely useless in single battles, Quash makes the target move last during that turn, provided they haven't attacked already. An interesting concept, but there are a few problems with this attack. It has absolutely no priority, most of the Pokemon who learn it have decent speed at best, and are much more suited for attacking than they are supporting. The one Pokemon that I think can use this move the most effectively is Murkrow with the Prankster ability. At least for a little while, because once the opponent catches wind of the strategy, that Murkrow's a dead man. One thing that I find odd about this move is that it was introduced in Gen 5, and yet no Pokemon from that generation can learn it. Which is a shame because I'm sure there are a couple of Unova Pokemon that can use this move well. Also, it sounds weird to say, doesn't it sound like the name of a bird call? Quash! This is the only entry on the list that's shared between 2 attacks, because of how similar they are to each other. Water Sport and Mud Sport weaken the power of fire and electric type attacks respectively. That does sound pretty good, but here's the kicker. Most of the Pokemon that learn these moves are either resistant or flat out immune to the aforementioned types. There are a few exceptions to this, like Badoo learning Water Sport and the Crabbyline learning Mud Sport, though in most cases I wouldn't use these Pokemon to fight against a type they're weak to, especially considering how frail those Pokemon are. These moves can see a little bit more use in double and triple battles, but in the case of water sport, there's a much better alternative in the form of Rain Dance. On top of it weakening fire-type moves, Rain Dance powers up water-type attacks, weakens Solar Beam, makes Thunder and Hurricane 100% accurate, and activates several abilities. Whereas water sport, most of the time, just adds extra padding to a Pokemon that didn't really need it to begin with. And I cannot tell you how many times I've encountered a lone Geodude that uses Mud Sport, and I just sit there utterly confused. You know, there seems to be several attacks from Generation 1 that are generally forgotten about. Comet Punch, Razor Wind... There was another one on the tip of my tongue that I just forgot, though I guess that proves my point. But of all the seldom remembered moves, Barrage is one of the worst. The move is exclusive to Execute and Exeggutor. Though you can hardly call it a signature move, there really isn't anything unique about it. It's almost an exact equivalent of Fury Attack and Double Slap. The only difference is that it doesn't make direct contact with the foe. And I'm not quite sure why Barrage is a physical attack when the only two Pokemon that learn it are more special oriented. When you take into account the fact that this move is outclassed by Bullet Seed, you know it's garbage. Heck, if you jumble the letters around in Barrage, you get the word garbage, with an embarrassing R left over. So all in all, this is just a move that has no real reason to exist. Rolling Kick! That was the move I was forgetting! Here's another move that had the majority of its issues back in the days of Red and Blue. I mean, if you thought Focus Energy was bad, just wait until you hear about Rage. Once this move hits, you won't be able to do anything else. You'll just keep using Rage until the battle ends or you die, whatever comes first. Status conditions like Sleep and Confusion can't stop this move, and Rage never loses any PP after the initial hit. If Rage happens to miss, its accuracy drops to 0.4%. Something tells me that Game Freak really didn't pay too much attention to this move during development. That or it was another glitch. Even today, with all of its problems fixed, Rage has no saving grace whatsoever. You're much better off with Tackle, and I'm not even kidding. Speaking of which, moves like Tackle and Tail Whip may not be the strongest attacks, but they were designed to be used early on in the game, and in that regard, they're actually quite good. And then there's Constrict, which is just bad no matter how you slice it. Constrict is tied with Triple Kick for having the lowest base power of any move, at a measly 10. But then again, Triple Kick's power increases with every successful strike, giving it a base power of 60, and if you factor in Stab and its Technician ability, its base power effectively becomes 135. So, never mind, Constrict is the worst damaging move in the game, bar none. And something I find hilarious is that it has a 10% chance of lowering the opponent's speed, as if that's supposed to be a redeeming factor or something. But when you're surpassed by pretty much every other damaging attack, there is no hope for you. Every move I've talked about so far, while they may be terrible, they're all intended to serve some kind of purpose. The only purpose the following move serves is to make players laugh and or question its existence. I think you all know where I'm going with this.
What's the point of splashing?
Yep, it's Splash. I honestly don't understand why this attack does absolutely nothing, and yet it's treated like an actual move with properties to it. It can't be used if gravity is in effect, and there was once an event Snorlax given out with Splash as its special move. Oddly enough, I used to think there was something special about this attack when I was younger. When Ruby and Sapphire first came out, there was a rumor going around the playground that said if Splash was used while you were underwater, it would do an insane amount of damage. Needless to say, I was pretty upset when I tried this out for myself and nothing happened. Now keep in mind, this is only number 2. There is actually something that I find worse than the almighty Splash attack. The one move that I dislike the most is one that I just recently discovered. It was introduced in Gen 5, which at that point, you'd think Game Freak would learn from their past mistakes and stop making dumb moves, but I guess not. Ladies and gentlemen, I bestow upon thee... Bestow. So why is a move with use above one that does absolutely jack squat? Well, I thought about it for a while, and that's when it hit me. Splash is a joke move. It's supposed to do nothing. Whereas Bestow is supposed to do something, but most of the time it's practically useless. In case you don't already know, let me explain what this move does. Bestow makes the user give their held item to the opponent. The move fails if the user isn't holding an item, if the opponent's already holding an item, or if the user is holding mail. Okay, so first off, mail was still relevant in Gen 5? Really? Secondly, when it comes to competitive play, there is no sense in using using this move, because 99% of all Pokemon used competitively are holding an item. That is a fact. And third, there are much better alternatives to this attack. Switcheroo and Trick work similarly to Bestow, except they take the opponent's held item and switch it with yours, which can lead to some interesting strategies. Bestow isn't all that great in single player either. I mean, one could theoretically throw a Toxic Orb onto a trainer's Pokemon to poison it, but all the Pokemon that can learn Bestow can also learn the Toxic TM. And if you bestow an item to a wild Pokemon and don't catch it, that item is gone for good. So when you make a move that makes Splash or some of the other moves on this countdown seem passable, you're doing something wrong. I would say that a Pokemon move couldn't get any dumber than this, but let's wait and see what future generations bring. Hey guys, thanks for watching! Hope you enjoyed this video. If there's a move out there that you think is Drek, please let me know what it is in the comments below. And don't forget to like, favorite, share, subscribe, I mean if you want. I'm not forcing you. Pokemonth continues next Saturday morning at 10 AM Eastern. But don't forget, E3 starts this Monday. You might see a reaction or two from yours truly during the week. Stay tuned for that. But anyways, with that, I will see you guys next time.